We've been conditioned to think that softness is weakness, that if you walk into a room and you're not the loudest, you've somehow forfeited your strength. But can I tell you something? There is a strength in stillness. There is power in the way a woman holds herself with quiet confidence. Not because she can't roar, but because she chooses not to waste her voice on noise that doesn't deserve her sound. Just because she isn't clapping back doesn't mean she's clueless. Just because she's graceful doesn't mean she's given up the fight. Softness is not surrender. It's strategy. It's the wisdom to know that not every battle requires your armor. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is keep your peace when everything around you is begging for chaos. The woman who walks away isn't always the one who lost. Sometimes she's the one who knew her worth well enough to know that some spaces aren't worth shrinking for. The world may see her as soft, but softness is often the wrapping around steel. Being soft doesn't mean you're easy to manipulate. It means you've mastered your emotions in such a way that other people's projections don't dictate your presence. You don't have to harden just because life tried to rough you up. You don't have to match energy when you're the source of a whole different power. People will mistake your softness for surrender because they've never seen a woman who can pray and war in the same breath, who can cry in the midnight hour and still rise in the morning with fire in her bones. Some of the strongest women I know are the ones who refuse to let the world make them bitter. They could have turned cold. They had every reason to. Life didn't hand them gentleness, but they chose to embody it anyway. That's not surrender. That's a stand. A woman who still chooses to love, still chooses to believe, still chooses to hope after everything that tried to break her. That woman is not soft in defeat. She is soft in defiance. We live in a culture that celebrates hardness. Be a savage, don't catch feelings, stay 10 toes down, and listen, I get it. But if you've got to lose your softness to survive, you're not really surviving, you're just hiding. Don't let the world convince you that your softness is something to be ashamed of. You can be soft and still set boundaries. You can be soft and still say no. You can be soft and still know who you are. Softness becomes a weapon when it's rooted in identity. When you know you're covered, when you know you're chosen, when you know God's hand is on your life, you stop letting circumstances dictate your character. You stop letting people's lack of understanding determine your level of power. You learn to stand tall even when your voice shakes. You learn to be gentle without being a doormat. Soft doesn't mean you lack discernment. It means you've learned how to guard your heart without closing it off. You've learned how to love people who haven't always loved you back and still not lose yourself in the process. That takes strength. That takes maturity. That takes the kind of growth that doesn't always show up in applause, but shows up in the healing you carry. And hear me, you don't have to become hard to be respected. You don't have to yell to be heard. You don't have to burn bridges to prove your fire. You can be soft and still take up space. You can be soft and still shut down the enemy. You can be soft and still change the world. There comes a moment when you have to realize that shrinking doesn't serve anyone. Not them, and certainly not you. You've been walking into rooms, dimming your light so someone else can shine. You've been biting your tongue so people don't feel threatened. You've been playing small because somewhere along the way you learned that strong women make people uncomfortable. But can I tell you the truth? Their comfort is not your assignment. You were not born to make everyone else feel okay while you suffocate under the weight of their insecurity. You've fought too many silent battles to act like you didn't earn that strength. You've cried yourself to sleep, pushed past betrayal, stood when everything around you told you to break. That strength didn't just show up, it was forged in fire. So why are you apologizing for it? Why are you explaining your resilience like it needs justification? People don't see what you've survived, but they want you to tone down the woman it created. The healed version of you, the bold version of you, the powerful version of you, that version doesn't owe anyone an apology. Your strength is not arrogance, it's awareness. It's the awareness of what God placed in you. It's the confidence that says, I don't need permission to take up space. You're not being extra, you're being elevated. You're not intimidating, you're anointed. And people who haven't done the work will always feel some type of way about the woman who has, but don't you dare fold because of their discomfort. Don't you dare soften the truth of your story because someone can't handle its weight. They told you to be humble and you took that to mean be invisible. But real humility is knowing where your help comes from while still owning what's in your hands. It's saying, yes, God did this in me, and refusing to hide it behind false modesty. You don't have to lower your voice to be heard. You don't have to minimize your calling to be accepted. The right people will see your strength and celebrate it. The wrong ones will try to make you question if you've gone too far, but those aren't your people. Stop saying sorry for growing. Stop apologizing because you changed. You outgrew some conversations, some relationships, some habits, and that's okay. You stepped into your voice and it made some folks uncomfortable. That's not your fault. That's your fruit. Growth will cost you comfort and strength will cost you approval. But you weren't created to be palatable. You were created to be powerful. And the more you step into that truth, the more you realize you never needed validation to begin with. They'll say you're too much because they haven't expanded enough to handle you. They'll say you've changed because they never expected you to rise. But let them talk. While they're talking, you're building. While they're questioning, you're becoming. You weren't given this strength to water it down for people who never wanted you to bloom. You were given this strength to walk boldly in every room, every assignment, every season God sends you into. You don't owe anyone softness that cost you your sanity. You don't owe anyone silence that cost you your identity. If your strength makes someone uncomfortable, that's not your weight to carry. That's their stretching to do. You've spent enough time apologizing for things God never asked you to hide. You've spent enough time trying to seem less so someone else could feel more. It's time to stop betraying your own becoming just to keep the peace. Strength isn't loud. It's not always in your tone. Sometimes it's just in the way you keep showing up, in the way you no longer explain why you're choosing yourself, in the way you say no without a 20-minute explanation, in the way you honor your boundaries like your soul depends on it, because it does. Strength isn't just who you are, it's what you carry, and you carry it well. There were moments that almost broke you, moments you don't talk about out loud because the memory alone still feels heavy. But what they don't know is that those same moments were the contractions of your becoming. That heartbreak wasn't just heartbreak, it was labor. That betrayal wasn't just disappointment, it was delivery. Pain doesn't show up in your life to destroy you. Pain shows up to reveal what was hidden in you all along. You didn't even know how strong you were until the storm came and you had no choice but to stand. You see, pain has a way of pushing you into places you never would have walked into willingly. You wouldn't have let go of that relationship if it hadn't fallen apart. You wouldn't have left that job if they hadn't forced your hand. You wouldn't have discovered the fullness of your voice if they hadn't tried to silence you. It was pain that opened the door to your power. And while you were praying for peace, God was preparing you for purpose. Sometimes the answer to your prayer doesn't feel like a blessing. It feels like a breaking. But even in the breaking, something sacred was happening. God was stretching you, shaping you, stripping away everything that wasn't aligned with where you were headed. You thought you were being buried, but you were actually being planted. And when you started to grow, you realized that the pain was never the end of your story. It was the birthplace. You don't get to power without going through something. That oil you carry, it came at a cost. That fire in your belly, it was lit in the dark. You stopped being afraid of pain when you realized it taught you how to fight. Pain gave you vision. Pain taught you discernment. Pain introduced you to the woman you didn't know you were capable of becoming. And now when life tries to knock you down, you don't panic like you used to because you remember the last time. You remember how you thought it would take you out, and yet here you are, still standing, stronger, wiser, louder, louder in your spirit, louder in your calling, louder in your identity. There is something about a woman who's been through hell and didn't lose her praise. She doesn't walk the same. She doesn't settle the same. She doesn't need to prove herself because her scars already speak. Her wounds have turned into wisdom. Her pain has turned into power. People want the oil, but they don't want the crushing. They want the strength, but they don't want the suffering. But the truth is, the crown you wear now was forged in the fire you prayed would pass. And can we talk about how the pain made you more compassionate, how it softened your heart even as it strengthened your soul? You used to see people through judgment. Now you see them through grace. That's power. The kind of power that can sit with someone in their sorrow and not need to fix it. The kind of power that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. Pain taught you how to carry others without losing yourself. It taught you how to love without losing your standards. So many people want to skip the process. They want the platform without the pressing. But you know better. You know that every tear, every silent night, every unanswered prayer was molding something divine inside of you. You didn't just survive the pain. You let it shape you. You let it refine you. You let it strip away who you pretended to be and introduce you to who you really are. And now, when people see your strength, they don't realize it's not ego, it's evidence. You carry yourself differently because you earned it. You don't flinch the way you used to. You don't question your worth like you used to. That power didn't come from applause. It came from agony. And now that you've seen what pain can produce, you don't run from it the same way. You let it work. You let it reveal. You let it birth something in you that comfort never could. We've been taught that kindness means silence, that if you're loving, you don't speak up, that if you're godly, you just let things go. But I need you to understand this. Kindness is not cowardice. Being gracious doesn't mean you lack a backbone. It doesn't mean you let people walk over you while you smile and pretend it doesn't hurt. You can carry love in your heart and still draw a line in the sand. You can be gentle in your spirit and still speak truth that shakes the room. Some of the most powerful moments in your life will come when you finally learn how to say what needs to be said, not with venom, but with vision, not with hate, but with clarity. Kindness doesn't cancel confrontation. Real kindness demands it, because to truly love someone, to truly love yourself, you have to be willing to deal with the tension. You have to be willing to face the conflict. You have to be willing to say, this isn't working for me, even when your voice trembles. There's a version of you that used to shut down, used to people please, used to avoid hard conversations just to keep the peace. But you've outgrown that silence. You've learned that peace built on avoidance is not peace at all. It's pressure. Pressure that builds, that leaks out in resentment, that explodes when you've had enough. God didn't call you to be a doormat in the name of kindness. He called you to be a woman of truth, and truth sometimes comes wrapped in confrontation. Don't let people manipulate you into thinking that setting boundaries is unkind. It is holy. It is healing. Boundaries are how you love yourself while still loving others. Confrontation is how you protect the garden of your spirit from being trampled by what you refuse to address. It's not about being mean. It's about being clear. And clarity is a kindness too. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop allowing someone to treat you in a way that dishonors who you've become. You can still be soft-spoken and speak with authority. You can still offer grace while standing on truth. The world wants women who stay quiet, who don't push back, who just accept things as they are. But God is raising women who will say, I love you, but I will not lose myself to keep you comfortable. I care for you, but I won't stay silent when something's not right. You don't have to choose between compassion and confrontation. They were always meant to walk together. There are things in your life right now that require confrontation, not because you're angry, but because you're awake. Awake to what you need, awake to what you deserve, awake to what God is doing in your life. And with that awakening comes a responsibility to protect the space around you, protect your energy, protect your peace, protect the progress you've made. That kind of protection only happens when you open your mouth and say what needs to be said. And yes, it might shake things up. It might disappoint people, but confrontation isn't about control. It's about clarity. You're not trying to punish anyone. You're just not willing to keep pretending. And that doesn't make you cruel. That makes you courageous. It's easy to stay silent and smile. It takes strength to be kind and still say, that hurt me. That crossed a line. That can't continue. And sis, you've got that strength. You've had it all along. So don't let anyone shame you for speaking up. Don't let anyone tell you that your softness disqualifies your boldness. You can have both. You need both, because the woman you're becoming can hug you and hold you accountable. She can listen and still lead. She can offer love and still require respect. She is kind, but she is not silent. She is confrontational, but she is not cruel. She is whole. There's a version of you that has been performing to be accepted, performing to be approved, performing to be liked by people who don't even see the fullness of who you are. You've twisted yourself into shapes you were never meant to fit, just to keep the peace, just to belong. But the problem with being liked by everyone is that you start losing pieces of yourself in the process. And slowly, without even realizing it, you've traded authenticity for applause. Somewhere along the line, you started believing that being liked was the same as being valued, that if they liked you, it meant you were doing something right, that if you disappointed them, it meant you were failing. But can I tell you the truth? Being liked is not your assignment. Being whole is, being true is, being rooted is. And that means being willing to disappoint people when their version of you no longer matches your reality. You are not everybody's cup of tea, and you were never meant to be. You were not sent to this earth to be palatable. You were sent to be powerful, and power doesn't always get applause. Sometimes it gets misunderstood. Sometimes it gets rejected, but it always gets respected, because people may not like you, but they can't deny what's real. And what's real is the woman who shows up without pretending, without people pleasing, without performing. Letting go of the need to be liked is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear, clear on who you are, clear on what you carry, clear on where you're headed. Because when you're clear, you stop giving people the pen to write your story. You stop shrinking when they don't clap. You stop second guessing your decisions just because someone else didn't understand them. You stop giving weight to opinions that weren't meant to hold your purpose. When you live to be liked, your boundaries get blurry. You say yes when you want to say no. You show up when you're empty. You carry what's not yours to prove you're loyal. But loyalty to others should never mean betrayal to yourself. You're not selfish for choosing your peace. You're not arrogant for owning your worth. You're not wrong for walking away from tables where your voice has to beg to be heard. They may call it selfish. They may call it difficult. But those are the words people use when they can no longer control you. And you were never created to be controlled. You were created to be free, free to change, free to grow, free to evolve. And freedom doesn't always come with a fan club. Sometimes it comes with solitude. Sometimes it comes with letting people talk while you keep walking. There will be people who only liked the version of you who stayed small, the version of you who stayed silent. And when you start standing up, when you start setting standards, when you start saying, this is who I am now, they might fall away. Let them. Because if someone's affection is tied to your silence, it was never love, it was control. And you don't need to be liked to be called. You don't need approval to be anointed. It's okay to outgrow people's expectations. It's okay to be misunderstood. You don't have to explain your healing to people who benefited from your brokenness. You don't owe anyone the watered down version of your truth. The more you step into who you truly are, the more you'll see who really values you, not for what you do, not for how you make them feel, but for who you are when you stop trying to be liked and start choosing to be real. There comes a time when you stop asking for permission to be who you already are. You stop waiting for someone to co-sign your calling, to validate your voice, to recognize the oil on your life. Because authority is not something they give you. It's something God already placed inside you. And you don't have to audition for what you were born to carry. You don't need a stage to walk in authority. You don't need applause to activate your assignment. You just need the courage to stop hiding. You've spent enough time second-guessing yourself, shrinking yourself, comparing yourself to people who look confident on the outside but are crumbling on the inside. But when you realize your authority doesn't come from performance, it comes from presence, His presence, everything shifts. It's not about who knows your name, it's about who sent you. It's about walking into rooms like you belong there, not because you're arrogant, but because God opened the door. And if He opened it, then you have the right to walk in bold. Authority means you stop begging people to see you. You start seeing yourself. You stop asking for seats at tables that were never built with you in mind. You build, you speak, you move like the power in you can't be outsourced, because it can't. It was carved in your wilderness. It was refined in your tears. It was shaped in the quiet moments when no one was watching but heaven. And now that same authority demands that you stop playing small for the comfort of those who never expected you to rise. When you step into your authority, you stop living reactive and start living intentional. You stop allowing fear to make your decisions. You stop allowing insecurity to run your schedule. You realize that the version of you that's been waiting is already qualified, already chosen, already equipped. You're not behind. You're not late. You're in position. And when you step into your authority, you don't chase. It comes to you. Favor follows alignment. Don't confuse humility with hesitation. God never asked you to hesitate. He asked you to trust. And trusting Him means trusting what He put in you. That fire, that vision, that wisdom, that voice, all of it is divine. All of it is necessary. So when you speak, speak like heaven is backing you. When you move, move like destiny is waiting for you. When you show up like you were called, because you were. You're not just filling space. You are shifting atmospheres. There are people attached to your authority, people waiting on your obedience, people who will never see breakthrough until you stop doubting what you carry. The enemy wants you to believe you're too flawed, too broken, too much, but that's because he knows what happens when you finally believe you're enough. That's why the warfare's been so heavy, because your voice, your vision, your authority threatens every lie he's tried to plant in your spirit. You're not ordinary. That's why ordinary things don't satisfy you. You were made to lead. You were made to break cycles. You were made to disrupt patterns. And that requires authority, not perfection, not applause, just authority, the kind that speaks when others whisper, the kind that walks in peace while others panic, the kind that declares, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, and actually lives it out. Authority is not a title. It's a posture. And when you stop apologizing for being chosen, when you stop diluting your identity to fit someone else's insecurity, when you stop delaying your next level because you're afraid of being misunderstood, you will start seeing what God saw in you all along. Not just a woman with potential, but a woman with power, a woman with presence, a woman with authority. There's a difference between being compassionate and being codependent, and too often we blur that line in the name of love. You keep pouring into people who have no intention of healing, hoping that your support will be the thing that changes them. But what if I told you that your love was never meant to be a life raft for someone else's refusal to grow? What if I told you that nurturing dysfunction doesn't make you strong? It makes you stuck. You can't rescue people who are committed to remaining broken. Somewhere along the way, you began confusing peacekeeping with peacemaking. You started thinking if you just loved harder, stayed longer, tolerated more, then maybe things would get better. But dysfunction doesn't heal through tolerance. It thrives in it. The more you accommodate it, the more it settles in like it belongs. The more you excuse it, the more it drains you. And suddenly, you're depleted, bitter, exhausted, and calling it loyalty. But loyalty that costs your identity is not loyalty. It's bondage. You've been praying for peace, but still opening the door to chaos, still answering the call of people who only reach for you when they need fixing, still rearranging your life around patterns that dishonor your growth. You can't heal in the same environment that's making you sick. And the truth is, some of the dysfunction in your life isn't accidental. It's familiar. And familiar doesn't mean safe. Familiar can still be toxic. Familiar can still be keeping you from your freedom. Stop telling yourself that dysfunction is normal just because it's what you've always known. Stop calling it love when it looks more like survival. You were not created to survive cycles. You were created to break them. That means you're going to have to disappoint some people. You're going to have to let some things unravel. You're going to have to stop being the one who always fixes everything, because some things are meant to fall apart when you stop holding them together. You've labeled yourself as the strong one, the dependable one, the fixer, but who's fixing you? Who's helping you heal from the emotional labor you've spent on people who never once asked how you were doing? You keep watering dry soil and wondering why nothing's growing. It's because dysfunction doesn't want to grow. It wants to be enabled. And it will keep using your empathy until you confuse martyrdom for ministry. But God never asked you to sacrifice your wholeness for someone else's comfort. There's a reason you feel heavy after certain conversations, a reason you feel anxious in certain spaces. That's your spirit trying to tell you this is not safe. This is not sustainable. This is not your assignment anymore. And you can't afford to keep ignoring those signs. You can't afford to keep showing up for what no longer serves your future. Dysfunction is loud, chaotic, and draining. Healing is quiet, uncomfortable, and clarifying. Choose healing. Choose alignment. Sometimes stopping the nurture is the most loving thing you can do, not just for them, but for you. Because the moment you stop enabling the cycle, you give them a chance to confront their own choices. And you give yourself permission to breathe again, to rest, to remember that you are not God in their story. You are not their savior. You are not the solution to a problem they refuse to face. Letting go isn't abandonment. It's alignment with your own deliverance. You don't have to explain your boundaries to people who are comfortable with your dysfunction. You don't owe anyone access to a version of you that you've outgrown. You are allowed to say, this is no longer okay. You are allowed to walk away without guilt. You are allowed to prioritize your peace over their comfort. Because the moment you stop nurturing dysfunction, you start nurturing destiny. And that's the space where healing can finally begin. You were never created to be silent in the face of what shakes you. That fire you feel, that stirring in your spirit when something doesn't sit right isn't random. That's your divine design speaking. Boldness was written into your DNA before you ever had to face your first storm. It's not something you earn, it's something you access. The enemy has been trying to convince you that confidence is arrogance, that strength is rebellion, that boldness is dangerous, but he's only afraid of you realizing who you truly are. There is nothing holy about shrinking. There is nothing righteous about silence when your voice was meant to shift atmospheres. Too many women have been taught that obedience means invisibility, that submission means silence, that power must be passive. But boldness doesn't disrespect God. It reflects him. Boldness is what walks you into rooms your fear told you to avoid. Boldness is what makes you speak when your past told you to stay quiet. Boldness is what wakes up legacy, authority, and purpose in the same breath. You weren't born to just survive. You were born to speak, to lead, to build, to challenge, to rise. And rising requires boldness. The kind of boldness that makes people uncomfortable because it doesn't ask for permission. The kind that walks in with truth even when it would be easier to lie. The kind that holds boundaries, holds space, and holds vision. That boldness isn't a personality trait. It's a birthright. It's heaven's stamp on your voice, your mind, your movement. You've been dimming your light, hoping it would make people more comfortable. But comfort doesn't create change. It is the bold ones who shift generations, the bold ones who say, this cycle ends with me, the bold ones who disrupt rooms, not with volume, but with conviction. Your boldness will make people question how you got free. Your boldness will disturb dysfunction and confront culture. And yes, it will cost you, but what it unlocks in you will be far greater than what you lose. Some of the resistance in your life is not because you're doing something wrong, it's because you've started walking in your birthright. You've stopped apologizing for your presence. You've stopped tiptoeing around what you were created to confront. That tension you feel, it's what happens when boldness wakes up. It's the stretch of expansion. It's the rumble of a woman stepping into her mantle without fear, without shame, without waiting for validation. You don't have to wait to be bolder. You just have to remember you already are. It's in your story. It's in the way you kept showing up when life tried to bury you. It's in the way you still believe after everything that tried to silence you. Boldness is not loud, it's consistent. It's choosing truth over comfort. It's holding your standard when everything around you says to lower it. It's standing up when the easier thing would be to stay seated and quiet. Every time you second guess yourself, remind yourself God didn't make a mistake when he gave you that voice, when he gave you that fire, when he gave you that calling. You are not too much. You are just enough for what you were called to do. You are not too intense. You are calibrated for impact. Your boldness is not a flaw. It is a weapon. It is how you tear down what tried to kill you. It is how you build what others were too afraid to even speak out loud. So walk like you know who sent you. Speak like you know who covered you. Move like your name is written in the strategy of heaven. Because it is. You don't need a crown to be called bold. You don't need approval to be chosen. You just need the courage to remember that boldness was never something you had to earn. It was something you inherited.